Hello everyone, I am Mr. Night Truth. I know many of you enjoy listening to these videos as you fall asleep. So before you drift off, I'd love for you to leave a comment letting me know where in the world you're tuning in from. And if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Alright, now let's get comfortable, relax, and let's go down into the story. Daniel pushed open the glass door with a hesitant hand. The golden arches above hummed faintly against the night sky, their glow bleeding into the empty parking lot. He had worked plenty of jobs before, warehouses, delivery shifts. But something about starting a midnight position at McDonald's felt strangely heavier. Maybe it was the silence, or maybe it was the woman waiting for him behind the counter. Melissa didn't smile. She looked up from the register, her dark hair tied back, her eyes carrying the kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from lack of sleep. "You're Daniel?" she asked flatly. "Yeah," he said, offering a half grin that died quickly under her stare. She wiped her hands on her apron and nodded toward the back. "Come on. Training starts now." The kitchen smelled of grease and disinfectant. Machines clicked and hissed around them, but the place felt too quiet, as if the building itself was holding its breath. Melissa grabbed a laminated sheet from the corkboard and slapped it onto the prep table. "These," she said, tapping the list with her finger, "are the rules." Daniel leaned closer. At first glance it looked normal. Guidelines about fryer safety, customer service reminders, cleaning rotations. But halfway down the list, things became strange. Do not look directly at the security cameras for longer than 3 seconds. Do not serve food after midnight, no matter who asks. If you hear knocking from the freezer, ignore it. Never touch the mirror in the staff bathroom. He frowned. "What? Is this some kind of joke?" Melissa's gaze didn't waver. "It's not a joke. And if you want to last here, you'll follow them." "Exactly." Daniel chuckled uneasily, waiting for the punchline. It didn't come. She was serious. Her face didn't twitch, didn't crack. "Come on," he said, trying to mask his nerves. "What happens if I break one? Corporate shows up and fires me?" Melissa's tone sharpened. "Worse. Much worse." They moved through the motions of the shift. Melissa showed him how to clean the shake machine, how to prep the buns, how to time the fryers so orders lined up smoothly. On the surface, it felt normal, but every few minutes, her eyes flicked toward the cameras in the corners, as though checking if they were watching back. At one point, Daniel caught his reflection in the stainless steel counter, his own face staring back, tired but curious. Beside it, Melissa's reflection looked distorted, stretched slightly, her lips parted in a silent warning he couldn't hear. When he blinked, it was gone. "Why the midnight cutoff?" he asked later, wiping down trays. Melissa froze, cloth dangling from her hand. She didn't look at him. She looked at the dark drive-through window instead, as though expecting something to peer in. "Because nothing good comes after 12, she whispered. "You'll learn." Her voice carried an edge, not of authority, but of fear. Hours dragged on. The store remained eerily empty, save for a single car that circled the lot without pulling in. Daniel mentioned it casually, but Melissa shook her head. "They're not for us." The way she said it, they lodged in his chest like a stone. By 3 a.m., Daniel was exhausted. He sat in the break room, staring at the crooked motivational poster on the wall. "Teamwork makes the dream work." The buzzing fluorescent light above gave the room a sickly glow. Melissa entered silently, carrying 2 cups of burnt coffee. "You think I'm messing with you?" she said, sliding a cup toward him. Daniel shrugged. "Kinda. It's just rules about mirrors, freezer knocking. It sounds like hazing." Melissa sat across from him, leaning forward. For the first time, her voice softened, but her eyes remained sharp. "When I started, my trainer said the same thing. I laughed, ignored the rules. First week, I served a man after midnight. Only, he wasn't really a man. He looked right at me, and the cameras went dead. When they came back, my trainer was gone. Just gone. I've been here ever since. Daniel's laugh caught in his throat. He wanted to dismiss it, to chalk it up to a scare tactic. But the tremor in her hands wasn't rehearsed. "You expect me to believe that?" he muttered. Melissa leaned back, her expression cold. "Number, I expect you to survive long enough to see for yourself." The rest of the night blurred into silence. Every sound, the hiss of oil, the creak of the freezer door, the distant hum of the neon sign, felt amplified, weighted with hidden meaning. Daniel kept stealing glances at the cameras. Once, he swore he saw a shape moving in the corner of the lobby, though no one was there when he looked directly. At 5 a.m., as they finished mopping, Melissa set the bucket aside and said, "That was your first night. Most people don't make it past a week. Remember the rules. Especially the first one." Daniel frowned. "Which one's the first again?" Melissa's voice dropped to a near whisper. "Don't stare too long at the cameras." Later, as Daniel walked to his car, the sun barely peeking over the horizon, he glanced back at the building. Through the front window, the security monitor flickered. For a second, he thought he saw himself inside, still mopping the floor, still moving. Long after he'd already left. His chest tightened. He told himself it was exhaustion, a trick of the eyes. But the reflection in the glass seemed to pause, lift its head, and look directly at him. Daniel stumbled into his car, locking the doors automatically. His hands shook as he turned the ignition. The lot felt heavier now, as though unseen eyes were watching from every shadow. He didn't dare look back again. As the engine roared to life, Melissa's words echoed in his ears. "It's not a joke. And if you want to last here, you'll follow them. Exactly." He told himself it was hazing, nothing more, but in the pit of his stomach doubt twisted like a knife. He hadn't just been given a job tonight. He had been given a warning. And warnings, he would soon learn, come too late. The second night felt easier, at least at first. Daniel told himself the unease from yesterday was nothing but nerves, the kind of paranoia that comes with a new job and too much caffeine. Still, Melissa's warning clung to him like grease on his skin. "Don't serve food after midnight." He repeated it in his head as he pulled into the lot, the glow of the golden arches stretching across the hood of his car. The sun had fully set, the parking lot wrapped in shadows. He tried not to glance at the windows. Last night's trick of seeing himself inside, the version of him that shouldn't have been there, lingered at the edge of his thoughts. When he stepped inside, Melissa was already at the counter, apron tied, hair pulled back, tight. She didn't greet him. Instead, she tossed him the keys to the register. "You're running front tonight," she said. Daniel caught the keys, forcing a grin. "So soon? Thought you'd ease me in." Melissa didn't look up. "You'll learn faster this way." Her clipped tone made it clear this wasn't a request. The hours crawled by. Customers came and went. College kids, tired truckers, one middle-aged woman who ordered a single black coffee and sat silently in the corner for an hour before leaving without drinking it. By 11:50 p.m., the lobby was empty. Melissa busied herself in the back, counting supplies, while Daniel leaned against the counter, drumming his fingers. He thought about the rules again. Do not serve after midnight. It seemed ridiculous. What difference could a few minutes make? Customers didn't vanish into thin air just because the clock struck 12. At 12:04 a.m., the drive-through headset crackled to life. "Hello," a low voice drawled. Daniel froze. He glanced toward the back, but Melissa hadn't noticed. Slowly, he pressed the button. Welcome to McDonald's. Can I take your order?" Silence. Then, Just a cheeseburger. The simplicity of it settled his nerves. A cheeseburger. Nothing ominous about that. He checked the time again. 12:05. Melissa would scold him for bending the rule, but it wasn't like the universe would punish him for one order. "Pull forward," he said, forcing confidence into his voice. The car rolled up to the window. It was an old sedan, paint peeling under the fluorescent lights. Daniel leaned out with the bag in hand. The driver sat motionless, face obscured by shadows. For a moment, Daniel thought the car was empty, until the man leaned forward. His skin was pale, almost gray, and his eyes were wrong. Too large, too dark, swallowing the light instead of reflecting it. His lips stretched into a smile that felt rehearsed, as though he'd watched others do it, but never practiced himself. "Thank you," the man said. The words were clear, but his mouth didn't quite move with them. Daniel's throat tightened. Every instinct told him to slam the window shut. Instead, he extended the bag with a shaky hand. The man didn't take it. He just stared. Behind him, Melissa's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Daniel!" He flinched. Melissa rushed forward, yanking him back from the window. The bag slipped from his hand, falling to the floor. "What the hell are you doing?" she hissed, slamming the drive-through window shut. Daniel stammered. He just wanted a cheeseburger." "There is no he," she snapped. "Not after midnight." Daniel turned back toward the car, but the window was fogging from the inside, as if someone, or something, was breathing against it. The outline of a face pressed against the glass, features smearing like wet paint. Then, in an instant, the car was gone. No engine starting, no tires squealing. Just gone. Daniel stumbled back, heart hammering. What the hell was that? Melissa shoved him against the counter, fury burning in her eyes. "That was you breaking the first rule that actually matters. You don't serve after midnight. Ever, Dot." He pushed her off, anger rising to meet hers. "You can't expect me to treat this like gospel without an explanation. What was that?" Melissa's expression cracked. Not anger this time, but fear. "They're not customers," she whispered. "They never are." The rest of the night passed in suffocating silence. Daniel avoided the windows, avoided the cameras, avoided Melissa. Every sound made him twitch, the hum of the fryer, the tick of the clock. At 3 a.m., Melissa finally spoke again, her voice low, controlled. "You think I'm cruel, but I'm trying to keep you alive. Do you understand that?" Daniel didn't answer. His mind replayed the figure at the window, that too wide smile, those empty eyes. He wanted to believe it was a hallucination, some elaborate prank. But deep down, he knew better. When the shift ended, Daniel dragged himself outside. The parking lot stretched empty under the buzzing lights. His car felt like the only safe place in the world. He slid inside, gripping the wheel, but couldn't bring himself to turn the key just yet. Through the windshield, the drive-through window loomed. For a second, he swore he saw a pale face lingering there, smiling, watching. He blinked, and it was gone. Melissa stepped outside, locking the doors behind her. She didn't look at him as she passed, only muttered, "Next time, it won't just watch." Her words sat in the air like a death sentence. Daniel drove off into the thinning night, but his reflection in the rear-view mirror made his blood run cold. For just a heartbeat, the reflection didn't move with him. It smiled. Daniel swore he wouldn't come back for a third night. After what he saw, the face at the window, the way the car vanished, he promised himself he was done. Yet when dusk came, he found himself pulling into the lot again, headlights sweeping across the same faded parking lines, the same buzzing sign. It was as if something tethered him here, pulling him back no matter how hard his mind screamed to turn away. Melissa was already inside when he walked in. She didn't greet him. She didn't even look up. Her silence felt like punishment. The shift started like the last, cleaning, prepping, going through motions that should have felt ordinary. But Daniel couldn't shake the memory of the pale face at the window, that wrong smile. Every beep of the fryer startled him. Every flicker of the lights sent a shiver down his spine. By midnight, he was counting the minutes until his shift ended. That was when the sound started. A knock. Soft. Deliberate. Coming from the freezer door. Daniel froze mid-step, a stack of trays in his hands. He glanced at Melissa. She was staring at the freezer, her body stiff, her face pale. "You hear that?" he whispered. Her voice was low, sharp. "Ignore it." The knocking came again, louder. Daniel set the trays down. Maybe it's a pipe or a rat. Melissa's head snapped toward him. "I said ignore it." The way her voice broke on the last word made his stomach twist. He tried to obey, but the sound wouldn't stop. It grew irregular, sometimes sharp, sometimes dragging, like nails scratching at the metal. His skin crawled. Then from the corner of his eye, he saw movement. The security monitors above the counter flickered, static washing across the screens. When the image cleared, Daniel's breath caught. Something was moving in the kitchen, right behind him. He spun around. Nothing. Just the empty fryer station, the prep table, the freezer door still rattling faintly under invisible hands. On the screen, though, a shadow glided across the floor. "What the hell is that?" Daniel's voice cracked. Melissa didn't look at the monitors. "Don't watch them too long." The shadow stretched, elongated, like it was bending toward him. Daniel's chest tightened. "There's something in here!" Melissa grabbed his arm, yanking him back from the screens. There's nothing, unless you let it in." Her grip was iron, her eyes desperate. They feed on attention, Daniel. The more you look, the more real they get. He wanted to pull away, to argue, but the conviction in her tone left him speechless. He risked another glance at the monitors. The shadow was closer now, standing right where he stood. He stumbled back, nearly slipping on the wet tiles. "This isn't real," he whispered, more to himself than to her. Melissa shook her head. "It's real enough." The noise from the freezer grew violent, banging now, the door handle rattling as if something inside was desperate to get out. Daniel's chest heaved, panic clawing at him. "I have to check." Melissa shoved him back hard. "Don't you dare. If you open that door, we're finished." Her voice broke into a ragged edge, not anger but terror. Daniel's hands trembled. His logical mind screamed that this was insane. There couldn't be anything inside. There couldn't be shadows moving where no one stood. But the monitors showed otherwise, and the banging was so real. The lights above flickered. The humming of the machines dipped into silence, then roared back, distorted. On the monitors, the lobby wasn't empty anymore. Figures, tall, still, stood in the corners, facing the cameras. Their heads tilted too far to the side, as though listening. Daniel felt bile rise in his throat. "Do you see that?" Melissa turned her back deliberately. "I told you, don't look." He couldn't tear his eyes away. The figures didn't move, but their presence pressed against him, heavy and suffocating. He blinked, and for a moment, the feed showed only static. When it cleared, the figures were gone. Melissa's voice cut through the silence. "They like you already." Daniel's chest clenched. What the hell does that mean? Melissa finally looked at him, her face haunted. "It means they've noticed you, and once they notice, they don't stop." The freezer went silent, abruptly, as if whatever was inside had grown bored. The sudden stillness was worse than the banging. Daniel leaned against the counter, his hands clammy, his breath ragged. He didn't want to believe any of this, but disbelief was a luxury he no longer had. "What are they?" he asked, his voice barely audible. Melissa shook her head. "Names give them weight. Don't name what you don't understand." Her answer felt like a door slammed in his face. For the rest of the shift, Daniel avoided the monitors, avoided the freezer, avoided asking more questions. He kept his eyes down, his ears tuned only to the sound of the fryer oil and Melissa's steady breathing beside him. But every now and then, out of the corner of his eye, he thought he saw something. A flicker, a blur, the suggestion of someone standing just behind him, waiting. When the sky began to pale outside, Melissa finally spoke again. "You'll either quit soon," she said quietly, "or you'll learn the rules the hard way. There's no in between." Daniel stared at her, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. "And you? Why are you still here?" Her lips parted as if to answer, but she shut them again. Whatever truth she carried, it was too heavy to share. When he left that morning, the parking lot felt even emptier than before. He sat in his car for a long time, gripping the wheel, staring at the reflection in his rearview mirror. For a moment he swore he saw movement in the back seat, a flicker of a shadow that shouldn't be there. He spun around. Nothing. But the reflection lingered, smiling faintly. Daniel forced the car into gear, his pulse racing. He told himself he imagined it, just like he imagined the freezer knocking, the figures on the monitors. But deep down, he knew better. Something was following him now, and the rules were the only thing keeping it at bay. Daniel came back for his fourth night with less resistance than he expected. Every bone in his body told him to stop, to cut ties, to vanish before the job swallowed him whole. But curiosity was a stronger chain than fear. Each rule, each flicker of shadow, each sound that had no source, it gnawed at him until there was no choice but to return. The parking lot was quiet again, bathed in the weak yellow glow of the arches. Daniel sat for a long minute in his car, staring at the building, whispering to himself, "Just one more shift, then I'll quit." Inside, the restaurant looked unchanged, sterile, humming, lifeless. Melissa was refilling the sauce station, movements mechanical. She barely acknowledged him. It wasn't until Daniel slipped into the back hallway, past the break room, that he noticed something he hadn't before. A door. It was narrow, tucked between the mop closet and the emergency exit. Heavy, steel with no sign above it. A thick padlock clung to the latch like a parasite. "Hey," he called, frowning. "What's this?" Melissa's head snapped up instantly. "Nothing." Daniel raised a brow. "Nothing?" "It's a locked door in the middle of the kitchen. Doesn't look like nothing." Melissa's face paled, her hands tightening around the sauce packets. "Stay away from it." Her reaction was too sharp, too immediate. It only deepened his curiosity. The night dragged on with its usual strange rhythm. Orders trickled in. Shadows flickered on the monitors. The freezer moaned once before going silent again. But Daniel's attention kept returning to that door. Every time he passed the hallway, he swore he felt it. A pressure, a faint hum, like a heartbeat buried in concrete. When he finally worked up the nerve to mention it again, Melissa cut him off with an edge of panic in her voice. "Don't," she said. "Don't talk about it. Don't even think about it. That door isn't for us." Her words should have been enough, but Daniel couldn't let it go. Later, around 2 a.m., a customer walked in. A man Daniel had seen before, always around the same hour. Middle-aged, with thinning hair and a denim jacket that looked older than he was. He never ordered more than black coffee. Tonight was no different. Daniel poured the cup, slid it across the counter. The man's eyes lingered on him, longer than usual. "You're new," the man said. "Second week," Daniel replied cautiously. The man sipped the coffee, then smiled without warmth. Bet they haven't told you about the back door yet. Daniel froze. What do you mean? Melissa appeared from the kitchen like a storm. He doesn't need to hear your stories. The man's smile widened, eyes glinting. Stories. Right. He took another slow sip. Funny thing about stories. Some of them walk right through that door and never walk back out. Melissa slammed her hand on the counter, startling both of them. Enough. Drink your coffee and go. The man didn't argue. He left the cup half full, stood, and walked out without another word. But his glance at Daniel before the door shut made the hair on Daniel's arms rise. When the customer was gone, Daniel turned on Melissa. What the hell was that about? What's behind that door? Melissa's face was unreadable, her voice tight. There is no door. Don't gaslight me, Daniel snapped. I've seen it. He's seen it. You know something. Melissa turned away, her shoulders hunched as though carrying invisible weight. Some things don't stay buried if you dig. Trust me, Daniel. You don't want to know. The rest of the shift was poisoned by silence. Melissa refused to look at him. The tension between them crackled louder than the fryers. Daniel's mind replayed the man's words. Some of them walk right through that door and never walk back out. He barely noticed the passing hours. Only when dawn crept against the windows did Melissa finally break the silence. You'll quit soon, she said, almost pleading. Before it's too late. Promise me. Daniel didn't answer. When his shift ended, he lingered in the hallway, staring at the locked steel door. He swore he heard something, faint scratching, too soft to be machinery. The padlock glinted under the dim light, mocking him. He reached out, fingertips brushing the cold metal. The hum under his skin was real, pulsing, alive. Melissa's voice cut through the darkness. Don't! Daniel jerked back, heart racing. She was standing at the end of the hall, her face shadowed, her eyes unreadable. Go home, she said flatly. Daniel didn't argue, but as he left the building, he knew the mystery had hooked itself into him too deeply. He couldn't walk away, not yet. Not while that door waited. The parking lot was empty, but not silent. As Daniel crossed to his car, he heard faint footsteps behind him, out of sync with his own. He spun around. Nothing. Sliding into the driver's seat, he glanced in the rearview mirror. For a split second, he thought he saw the denim-jacketed man sitting in the back, smiling faintly. When he turned, the seat was empty, but the smell of black coffee lingered. Daniel gripped the wheel, his knuckles white. The rules had been strange enough. The shadows, the freezer, the pale faces at midnight. They were nightmares he could barely name. But the door was different. It wasn't a fleeting figure on a monitor or a noise he could dismiss. It was real, solid, locked. And something waited on the other side. He drove home in silence, Melissa's words gnawing at him. There is no door. But he knew she was lying, and lies had a way of rotting from the inside out. The morning after his fourth shift, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling of the locked door. Even sleep refused to give him relief. He dreamt of metal hinges groaning open, of a breath against his ear, whispering his name. When he woke, his bedsheets clung to him, damp with sweat. By the time he returned that night, he felt hollowed out, running on caffeine and unease. Melissa was already there, seated in the break room, with her arms folded tight. She didn't greet him. She didn't even look at him. Daniel walked past her, trying to ignore the pounding in his chest. But something caught his eye. On the corkboard above the microwave, half buried under faded corporate safety posters, was a sheet of yellowing newsprint. A clipping. He leaned closer. The headline was faded but legible. Local teen still missing. Last seen at McDonald's. The grainy black and white photo showed a girl, no older than 16, with long dark hair, and a nervous smile. Daniel's breath caught. "Melissa." His voice came out strained. "Who is this?" Melissa didn't move. "Take it down." Daniel's hand hovered over the paper. "Why is it here?" "Because I put it there." Her tone was sharp, but beneath it trembled something else, something that felt like grief. Daniel slowly lowered his hand. This girl, she went missing here." Melissa finally looked at him. Her eyes were tired, red at the edges as if she'd been fighting tears for hours. "She was one of us," Melissa said quietly. "Her name was Rachel. I trained her, just like I trained you." The words hit Daniel like ice water. "What happened to her?" Melissa pressed her lips together, staring past him as if replaying a memory she didn't want to see. "She broke a rule." The silence that followed was suffocating. Daniel's throat tightened. "Which rule?" he asked. Melissa's fingers drummed against her arm. "The window. Midnight." Daniel's stomach turned. "The same one I broke." "She didn't believe me," Melissa continued, her voice cracking. "She thought it was all just a joke, just stupid hazing. So she served after midnight. And when the car pulled up..." Melissa's words faltered, her eyes unfocusing. When it pulled up, she smiled and handed over the bag like nothing was wrong. Daniel leaned forward. "And then?" Melissa shook her head slowly. The cameras caught it. Her leaning into the window. Something leaned back. But it wasn't a customer. It wasn't anyone we've ever seen before. And then... She swallowed. She was gone. Just gone. No sound, no scream. One blink she was there. The next, empty space. Daniel's pulse hammered in his ears. "They never found her?" Melissa gave a hollow laugh. "How could they? You think the cops would believe that something in the dark swallowed her? Number, they called it a runaway. Another kid who disappeared into the city. They never came back here. Not once." Daniel glanced back at the clipping, at the girl's uncertain smile. The weight of it pressed into his chest. "I don't understand," he said finally. "If you knew what happened, why stay? Why keep working here?" Melissa's eyes narrowed. "Because somebody has to. If we left, they'd hire new kids. Kids who wouldn't know the rules. More of them would vanish. I stay because someone has to warn the next fool who thinks they can ignore the signs." Her gaze pierced him, sharp as glass. "That fool is you, Daniel." The accusation stung. He looked away, shame burning his throat. But the question wouldn't die. "What about the door?" he asked. Melissa's expression hardened instantly. "Enough!" "No!" Daniel snapped, louder than he intended. "You can't keep shutting me out. First the shadows, then the freezer, now this. A missing girl? Melissa, I need answers." Her voice rose with sudden fury. "And I told you, stop asking. Every answer is just another noose around your neck. You think curiosity keeps you safe? It doesn't. It feeds them." Daniel flinched at her outburst. For a moment, he thought she might cry, but she didn't. She just turned away, gripping the counter so tightly her knuckles went white. The rest of the night moved like a fog. Orders came and went. Shadows writhed on the cameras. And still Daniel's mind clung to the clipping. Rachel. 16. Last seen right here. He couldn't shake the image of her leaning into that midnight window, of something unseen pulling her into the dark. He wondered if she had hesitated, if she had heard Melissa's warnings echoing in her head the way his did now. And he wondered what she saw in that final instant, the instant before she was erased. Near closing, Daniel lingered again by the forbidden door. His hand hovered near the padlock, just inches from the cold steel. The humming sensation was stronger tonight, throbbing under his skin like static. Somewhere behind him, Melissa's voice cut through the silence, flat and exhausted. "She was standing where you are when she disappeared. Daniel froze, turning slowly. Melissa stood in the hallway, shadows stretching across her face. Her eyes glistened with something unreadable. Fear, anger, maybe regret. "Don't be next," she whispered. Then she walked away, leaving Daniel alone with the door. When his shift finally ended, Daniel stumbled out into the dawn. The air was cold, sharper than usual. He lit a cigarette with trembling hands, something he hadn't done in years. As the smoke curled upward, he glanced back at the building. For a split second he thought he saw her, Rachel, standing in the break room window, her face pale, her dark hair falling over one eye, watching him. He blinked. The window was empty, but when he slid into his car, the newspaper clipping lay folded neatly on his passenger seat. Daniel hadn't touched it. Neither had spoken since the clipping appeared in Daniel's car. The weight of unasked questions pressed against Daniel's ribs. Every shift seemed to push him further from reality. First the shadows, then the missing girl, and now the undeniable fact that Melissa was hiding something bigger. He caught himself glancing at her again, watching her shoulders stiffen under the fluorescent light. Finally, she dropped the spatula. It clattered against the grill. "I can't keep doing this," she muttered. Daniel froze. "Doing what?" Melissa pressed her palms against the counter, head bowed. "Pretending. Training. Lying to you." Her voice trembled, raw and unguarded in a way Daniel had never heard before. He took a cautious step closer. "Melissa, what do you mean?" She laughed bitterly, but the sound broke halfway through. When she turned to face him, her eyes glistened. "You think the rules are just for survival? That if you follow them, you'll make it through? That's not how it works. Not for me." Daniel's mouth went dry. "Then how does it work?" Melissa's voice dropped to a whisper. "Someone has to pay." The friar hissed violently, spitting grease onto her arm. She didn't flinch. Daniel's pulse quickened. "Pay for what?" Melissa looked at him as if the words themselves might destroy her. Then, slowly, she spoke. "The rules are balanced on sacrifice. Every trainer is bound to it. You think I stayed here out of loyalty, out of duty? I stayed because I have no choice. If the rules aren't fed, they take me instead." Daniel stared at her, his mind refusing to process. "Sacrifice? What are you talking about?" Her lips trembled as she said it. "The trainees. Every so often, one doesn't make it. And when they don't, the rules leave me alone." The floor seemed to tilt beneath Daniel. His hands gripped the counter to steady himself. "You mean—" His voice cracked. "Rachel!" Melissa's face twisted. "Rachel! And others before her." The silence that followed was unbearable. The buzzing lights overhead, the hiss of the fryer, the faint hum of the freezer. They all seemed to mock him. Daniel's stomach lurched. "You knew she would die." Melissa's eyes darted away. "I warned her. I always warn them. But warnings aren't enough. The rules demand a mistake. Sooner or later, every trainee breaks one. And when they do—" She shook her head, unable to continue. Daniel felt sick. "You let her walk into it. You let her serve past midnight." Melissa's composure cracked. Tears spilled down her cheeks, streaking through the grease smeared on her skin. "You think I wanted this?" she cried. "You think I don't wake up every day with their faces carved into my memory? I begged her not to. I begged all of them. But I can't stop it. If they don't fall, then I do." The betrayal stung sharper than any shadow or whisper. Daniel staggered back, shaking his head. "All this time, you acted like you were protecting me, like you were teaching me to survive, but really you were just waiting for me to mess up." Melissa's shoulders shook. It isn't like that. Isn't it? His voice rose. You need me to fail. You want me to fail, because it saves you. Her hands trembled as she reached for him, but he recoiled. I don't want you to die, she whispered. God, Daniel, I don't. I tried so hard. You remind me of my brother. That's why this is harder. That's why... She broke off, choking on a sob. Daniel's chest burned with rage and grief. He wanted to scream at her, to run, to do anything but stand here drowning in her confession. The fryer popped, startling them both. Grease hissed and spat as if echoing the tension in the room. Daniel swallowed hard, his throat dry. How many? Melissa froze. He stepped closer, voice trembling with fury. How many trainees before me? How many faces on that corkboard that you never told me about? Melissa's silence was its own answer. Daniel's vision blurred with tears. He clenched his fists so tight his nails cut into his palms. You're a murderer. Melissa flinched as if he had struck her. Number, I didn't kill them. The rules did. She broke, her voice collapsing into a whisper. I just didn't stop it. The fryer alarm beeped suddenly, shrill and mechanical, making Daniel jump. Melissa silenced it with a trembling hand, but the moment lingered like an echo. Daniel stared at her, feeling the ground crumble beneath every word she'd ever spoken. So what now? He asked hoarsely. You keep training me until I'm gone too? Until I make my mistake? Melissa shook her head desperately. Number, you're different. You're careful. I've seen it. Maybe you can be the one who makes it through. Her voice was pleading, fragile, but Daniel only heard manipulation. He backed toward the break room door, his hands trembling. Stay away from me. Melissa took one step forward. Daniel, please. Stay away. His shout rang across the empty restaurant. The two stared at each other in the harsh fluorescent light, the fryer's grease popping between them like static. Finally, Melissa lowered her head. Her tears dripped onto the floor, lost in the oil-slick smell that filled the air. You'll see, she whispered. You'll see it isn't me you should hate. It's them. But Daniel was already gone, pushing through the break room door, heart pounding, her words clawing at his mind. He sat in his car at dawn, staring at his trembling hands. He could still smell the grease on his skin, hear Melissa's voice in his skull. Sacrifice. Trainees. Rachel. The word betrayal burned hotter than the morning sun rising over the empty parking lot. And in the glass of his rearview mirror, for just a flicker of a second, he swore he saw Rachel's reflection sitting in the back seat, watching. Daniel almost didn't show up for his next shift. After Melissa's confession, every bone in his body told him to quit, drive home, and never set foot in that restaurant again. But fear worked both ways. If he left, the rules would follow. He was certain of it. Walking away wasn't escape, it was invitation. So he clocked in. The fluorescent lights hummed as if mocking him. The fryer sizzled in its endless rhythm, and the air smelled of grease and something sour, like old pennies. Melissa wasn't there tonight. Instead, a tall man with thinning hair and a creased McDonald's polo waited by the office door. Daniel, right? The man said, extending a hand. Mr. Harlan, night manager. Daniel hesitated before shaking it. Harlan's grip was dry, too firm, like someone trying to prove something. Melissa out? Daniel asked. Harlan gave a practiced smile. Needed a break. Happens. You'll be with me tonight. Something in his tone tightened Daniel's stomach. The shift began quietly. Harlan moved through the restaurant with a manager's authority, double-checking fry bins, locking cabinets, signing log sheets Daniel had never seen before. Everything about him felt corporate, by the book, rule-driven. But underneath, Daniel sensed calculation. "You've heard the protocols by now?" Harlan asked, tapping a laminated card pinned near the register. Daniel's eyes scanned the list. They were the same rules Melissa drilled into him. Never serve past midnight. Never open the freezer if you hear knocking. Never acknowledge the figures on the cameras. "Yeah," Daniel said flatly. Harlan chuckled as though easing a nervous employee. "I know how they sound. Superstitious. Creepy. But corporate has their reasons. Safety. Liability. This place runs 24/7, Daniel. Weird things happen at night. We write procedures, call them rules, and everyone stays safe." It was rehearsed, too polished. "Corporate," Daniel repeated, narrowing his eyes. "You're saying someone at headquarters wrote these?" Harlan's smile thinned. "Something like that." Later, while Harlan stepped outside to take a phone call, Daniel pretended to mop near the office. The door was ajar. Inside, the desk phone glowed red. Active line. Harlan's voice carried low but urgent. "Yes. He's here now." "No. Melissa hasn't told him everything. She wouldn't dare. But he's sharp. If he keeps asking questions." A pause. Harlan nodded into the receiver. "Understood. I'll keep him in line. Feeding the silence comes first. Always." Daniel's skin went cold. Feeding the silence. He clutched the mop tighter, forcing himself to breathe evenly as Harlan returned, hanging up with an easy grin. "Everything good?" Harlan asked. "Yeah," Daniel lied. The hours dragged. At 2 a.m., the lobby was empty, but Daniel swore he heard whispers curling out of the vents. Harlan didn't flinch. He filled out forms, adjusted cameras, and poured himself black coffee as if nothing was wrong. Finally, Daniel couldn't take it anymore. "What does it mean?" Harlan looked up. "What does what mean?" Daniel leaned against the counter, lowering his voice. Feeding the silence. The air seemed to thicken. For the first time all night, Harlan's mask slipped. His eyes narrowed, calculating, then softened back into that false managerial calm. "Melissa," he said slowly, "talks too much." Daniel shook his head. "She didn't tell me that. You did. I heard you." Harlan's silence was answer enough. The fryer alarm beeped, breaking the tension. Harlan pressed the button to silence it, but his eyes never left Daniel. "You're a smart kid," he said finally. "Too smart. That's dangerous here." Daniel's pulse pounded. "What is it? What are you feeding?" Harlan leaned closer across the counter, his voice a whisper. "Think of it like soundproofing. If the silence isn't kept satisfied, it leaks, it spreads. And trust me, you don't want to hear what's on the other side of it." Daniel stepped back, his throat dry. "You're lying," he said. "All of you. Melissa, you. This isn't corporate. This is something else." Harlan chuckled darkly. "Believe what you like. But if you want to keep breathing, you'll follow the rules. They're the only thing standing between you and the silence." At 3 a.m., the cameras glitched. Static swallowed the feed, then cleared, showing the lobby empty. But Daniel swore he saw movement. A figure standing in the corner, its body blurred like smudged glass. Daniel pointed. "What about that? Safety protocol?" Harlan didn't even look. "Don't acknowledge it." The figure tilted its head, though its face was nothing but distortion. Daniel's skin crawled. "I asked you a question," Daniel snapped. Harlan's voice hardened. "Don't. Acknowledge. It." The screen flickered. The figure vanished. Daniel's heart hammered. Harlan returned to his paperwork as if nothing had happened. By dawn, Daniel's hands were shaking so badly he nearly dropped the mop. Harlan walked him to the door, calm as ever. "See?" he said lightly. "Another shift survived. Not so bad." Daniel wanted to scream, to demand the truth, but his body refused. He stepped out into the morning air, lungs burning with the greasy stench still clinging to him. "Tomorrow night," Harlan added from the doorway. "Don't be late." Daniel turned. "And if I am?" Harlan's smile was thin, unreadable. "Then Melissa won't be the only one who regrets it." Driving home, Daniel replayed the conversation in his head, feeding the silence, Harlan's phone call, the figure on the cameras. Melissa might have been broken, but Harlan was something else. Calculated, controlled, part of a bigger machine. And Daniel knew, with sick certainty, that the truth went far beyond this store, this city, maybe even this world. He gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles whitened. Someone, somewhere, wasn't just making rules. They were making sacrifices. And Daniel was next in line. Daniel almost called out sick. After hearing Harlan's cryptic warning about feeding the silence, every instinct screamed to stay away. But dread wasn't the kind of illness he could report, and some part of him feared absence would be worse than showing up. So he clocked in. Again. The restaurant buzzed with its usual fluorescent hum, though tonight the tension was sharper. Melissa was back on shift, her eyes bloodshot, her hands trembling as she tied her apron. She avoided Daniel's gaze, as if afraid he could see the confession she'd unloaded days earlier, still written across her face. They weren't alone. A new hire named Kenny manned the fryer. Younger than Daniel, wiry, eager to please. He whistled while dropping baskets of fries into the sizzling oil, oblivious to the undercurrent that made Daniel's skin crawl. Harlan lingered in the office. Door cracked, phone glowing. Always listening. Always waiting. The first hours passed without incident. The usual whispers slid through the vents. The cameras blinked static before clearing. Daniel tried to focus on cleaning trays, but unease gnawed at him. It happened just after midnight. Kenny yelped from the fryer. Daniel spun around. The boy clutched his forearm, skin blistering red as grease dripped from a tipped basket. The air filled with the acrid stink of burnt flesh. Melissa was on him in seconds, yanking his arm under the sink, turning the faucet full blast. "Keep it cold! Keep it cold!" she barked, voice cracking. Daniel grabbed towels, wrapping them tight. Kenny's face was pale, lips trembling. I didn't touch it. It tipped." Daniel frowned. "You mean it slipped?" Kenny shook his head violently. It jerked, like someone pulled it. They rushed him to the break room couch. Daniel kept pressure on the wound while Melissa dialed emergency services. But before anyone arrived, Harlan stepped from the office, his face carved into calm authority. "No hospital," he said flatly. Melissa froze. "He's burned, Harlan. Badly." Harlan's eyes hardened. "You know the rules. No outside attention. We treat him here." Kenny whimpered, clutching Daniel's sleeve. "Please, take me." Daniel snapped. "Are you insane? He needs help." But Harlan only repeated slower. "No outside attention." Melissa lowered the phone, trembling. Later, when Kenny had passed out from shock, Daniel crept into the office. The security feeds were still recording. He scrubbed backward until the fryer incident replayed. There it was, Kenny at the fryer, humming. He lowered the basket, leaned back, and then the screen stuttered. For 2 frames, Daniel's breath caught, because Kenny wasn't alone. A shadowy figure loomed behind him, hand outstretched. The basket lifted sharply as if yanked upward, splashing grease across Kenny's arm. Then the figure was gone. Daniel leaned closer, heart hammering. The timestamp glitched, digits flickering, then resumed as if nothing had happened. He ran it again. Same result. Kenny wasn't lying. Something else had hurt him. Melissa appeared in the doorway, pale, watching Daniel watch the footage. "You saw it too," she whispered. Daniel looked up. What are they? She shook her head slowly. Don't call them anything. Don't give them that. They're restless. Her voice dropped to a shuddering whisper. They want someone. Soon. The words made his stomach twist. Someone? What do you mean? Melissa's eyes glistened with tears. Every time they get hungry, accidents start happening. Burns. Cuts. Machines break. They're warning us. If they don't get what they want. Her breath hitched. They take it themselves. Kenny stirred on the couch, groaning. Daniel stared at his blistered arm, rage rising. So what? We just let them? Sacrifice one of us because the shadows throw a tantrum? Melissa squeezed her eyes shut. You think I want this? You think I don't see their faces every time I close my eyes? Her words cut through him, raw with guilt. From the office, Harlan's voice rang out. Shift isn't over. Clean up the mess. Daniel slammed the monitor off, fury boiling. He knew, he hissed to Melissa. He knew this would happen. Melissa didn't deny it. The hours crawled. Kenny drifted in and out of consciousness, while Melissa sat beside him, whispering prayers under her breath. Daniel scrubbed the fryer, the grease staining his arms no matter how hard he scrubbed. At 3 a.m., the cameras glitched again. Daniel forced himself to look. The break room feed flickered. Kenny lay still on the couch. But in the static, for half a second figure loomed above him, face smeared into blackness, mouth open in a silent scream. When the feed cleared, Kenny was alone. Daniel stumbled back, bile rising in his throat. Near dawn, Kenny woke, delirious. His lips formed broken words. They whispered, said it should have been me. Daniel froze. What did they say? Kenny's eyes rolled back. Someone else. Then he went limp again. Melissa clutched Daniel's arm, her nails digging into his skin. Do you understand now? They won't stop until one of us is given. That's how it works. That's how it always worked. Daniel's voice was raw. And if we don't? She swallowed hard. Then it takes all of us. When the sun finally broke, Daniel left the building with grease clinging to his clothes and Kenny's ragged cries echoing in his ears. Harlan locked the doors behind them as if nothing had happened. Daniel turned back once. Through the tinted glass, the fryer gleamed under fluorescent light. Clean, harmless, waiting. But he knew the truth now. The fryer hadn't burned Kenny. The silence had, and it was hungry. Daniel barely slept after Kenny's accident. His mind churned with images of the fryer, the flickering cameras, and the whisper that had seeped into Kenny's delirium. Someone else. When he dragged himself back the following night, Melissa was waiting by the dumpsters, cigarette trembling between her fingers. She looked like she hadn't gone home, hair oily, uniform wrinkled. You came back, she muttered, exhaling smoke that drifted like a veil. Most people would have run. Daniel shoved his hands in his pockets. You know I can't. Not until I understand. Her eyes darted to the neon glow above the restaurant. Careful with that word. Understanding costs more than you want to pay. Inside, Harlan was absent. The office door hung open. Papers stacked neatly. It almost looked like a normal store. Almost. Melissa led Daniel to the break room. Something was taped on the wall. Another sheet of yellowed paper, written in the same blocky font as the other rules pinned up months earlier. Except this one was different. No number, no bullet point, just one line. One must not leave. Daniel read it twice, pulse hammering. What the hell is this? Melissa's face tightened. The last rule, the one they don't talk about. Because if you knew it first, you'd never clock in. Daniel stepped back. Not leave? What does that mean? Not leave the building? Not leave town? Her gaze fell, voice barely audible. Not leave. Them. Daniel's skin prickled. He remembered Kenny's mumbling, the cameras glitching, the dark figure at his side. So that's it? We're all prisoners here? Melissa crushed her cigarette into a paper cup, hands shaking. Not all. Just the trainers. The ones who break in the right way. The trainers? Daniel whispered. She nodded slowly. You ever wonder why Harlan picked you? Why me before you? It isn't about skill. It's about damage. People like us. Easier to bind. Easier to keep. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. I was 17 when they offered me this. I thought it was a job, a way out of a mess I'd made. My parents didn't want me. I thought maybe someone here would. I was wrong. They don't want us. They just want us empty. Daniel's stomach turned. So what happens if you try to leave? Melissa's lips trembled. You've seen it. Accidents. Disappearances. The missing girl. The silence doesn't let you go. It consumes you, one way or another. That's the last rule. The break room buzzed with its flickering light. Daniel stared at the rule until the words seemed to move. His thoughts spiraled. If trainers were chosen because they were broken, then Melissa's confessions weren't just guilt. They were part of the chain. Melissa grabbed his wrist suddenly, nails biting into his skin. Daniel, listen to me. I can't do it anymore. I've carried this too long. Every day I stay, I feel them pulling at me, hollowing me out. You're still new. You're strong enough to take it. Please, take my place. Her voice cracked on the last word. Daniel yanked his hand back. You want me to... what? Volunteer? Just step in and let them devour me? Her eyes burned with desperation. It's not devouring. It's binding. If you accept, if you commit to training, to keeping the cycle, they don't kill you. They keep you alive. Forever, if you're willing. Daniel laughed bitterly. Alive? You call this alive? Watching shadows tear kids apart, pretending it's training? That's survival? Melissa's voice rose. It's better than the alternative. The room went silent. Only the hum of the soda machine filled the air. Daniel stared at her, breath ragged. You think I'll just roll over and take your place? After you fed other kids to this thing? After you admitted you betrayed them? Her face crumpled, tears streaming. I had no choice. There's always a choice. She shook her head violently. Not here, not anymore. You don't get it, Daniel. The last rule isn't just a warning. It's a sentence. Once you've trained, you belong to them. And if you don't bind yourself willingly, they'll take you piece by piece until nothing's left. You'll beg for it by the end. Daniel clenched his fists. Then maybe it's better to burn out than to live like this. Her expression hardened. For the first time, Melissa didn't look like a victim. She looked like someone cornered, desperate, dangerous. You don't mean that, she said flatly. I do. No. She stepped closer, voice trembling but resolute. You're scared. You're angry. I was too, once. But you'll change your mind. You'll see it's the only way. And when you do, I'll be free. Daniel froze. The realization hit him like ice water. That's what this is about, he whispered. Not saving me. Saving yourself. Melissa's lips parted, but no denial came. Footsteps echoed in the hall. Harlan's voice carried faintly, talking into his phone again. Daniel heard the words clear this time. Yes, the silence is stirring. One of them will bind tonight. Melissa's eyes widened, panic flashing. She grabbed Daniel's shoulders. Please! If it's not you, it's me. And I can't anymore. Don't make me go back in there. Daniel shook his head, jaw set. I won't be your replacement. I won't be anyone's. For a moment, silence hung between them, heavier than the air vent's whispers. Then Melissa's face twisted, torn between despair and fury. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "They'll make you regret it." Daniel backed away, the break room door cold against his spine. Maybe, but at least it'll be my choice. Harlan appeared in the doorway, phone still in hand, eyes narrowing at the sight of them. "Everything all right in here?" Neither spoke. The tension crackled like grease in a fryer. Daniel forced himself past both of them, heart pounding. He didn't know where he was going, just that he needed air, space, distance from Melissa's pleading eyes. But the final rule followed him, etched into his skull: one must not leave. And as he pushed through the swinging door back into the fluorescent glow of the kitchen, he felt it. A shift in the air, the silence bending, watching, waiting. Melissa's whisper carried faintly behind him. "Then it's betrayal, Daniel. You've chosen betrayal." Daniel had barely made it past the fryer station when the kitchen lights flickered, buzzing with an unnatural static. The rule still clawed at his mind. One must not leave. Each step toward the back door felt heavier, like the air itself thickened against him. He shoved the emergency exit bar. The alarm didn't sound. The door didn't move. Instead, the metal groaned, heat radiating through it as if someone had welded it shut from the outside. Behind him, the kitchen doors swung open. Harlan's calm, measured footsteps echoed. Melissa trailed behind, her face pale, eyes glassy as though the silence had seeped into her veins. "Leaving early?" Harlan asked, tone almost casual. "That's against protocol." Daniel spun, sweat slicking his palms. "Protocol? You mean your lies? You've been feeding us to it. All of us." Harlan didn't flinch. He adjusted his tie, voice smooth. "Sacrifices. That's the word. The silence requires balance. The rules keep the balance. Break them, and the debt grows." Melissa's voice cracked from behind him. "He won't listen. He won't take it. He won't replace me." Daniel turned to her. The pleading girl from the break room was gone. What stood there was a vessel torn between terror and devotion, her hands trembling as though invisible threads pulled her forward. Melissa," Daniel whispered, "you don't have to do this. You can stop. We can—" "No," she cried, cutting him off, voice ragged. "There's no stopping. There's only giving. If it's not you, then it's me." Harlan stepped between them, eyes dark and unblinking. "She's right. Someone always pays. That's the cost of keeping this place alive, of keeping you alive." Daniel's heart pounded. He took a step back toward the fryer, the sizzle of hot oil filling the silence. "You think this is life? Chained to a set of rules, bleeding kids into the dark just to keep flipping burgers? That's not living. That's slavery." Harlan's lips curved into a small, unsettling smile. "Call it what you like, but it works. Until someone resists." The air grew colder. The cameras above hissed, static crawling across the screens in the corner. Daniel caught his own reflection in the convex mirror. Fractured, multiplied, surrounded by shadows that weren't his. Melissa staggered forward, clutching her chest. Her breath came shallow, eyes darting between Daniel and Harlan. "It's already chosen. It knows. If I don't give it someone—" She broke off, trembling violently. "It'll take us both." Daniel reached for her, but Harlan shoved him back, grip iron hard. "Stay out of it, boy. You had your chance to bind. Now you're nothing but meat." Melissa let out a strangled sob. "Don't say it like that." "Why not?" Harlan's voice dripped with disdain. "That's what they all are. Meat. You, him, the ones before. The silence doesn't care who you are. It only cares that someone is given." Daniel shoved Harlan's hand off and shouted, "Then why not you? The question hung heavy, echoing against tile and steel. For the first time, Harlan faltered. His jaw tightened. Melissa's eyes widened. She looked at Harlan with something like recognition and hatred. "You've never given anything," she whispered. "You've only taken. Made us choose over and over, while you just watch." Harlan's face hardened. "My role is to maintain order, to ensure the flow. That's sacrifice enough." "No," Melissa said, voice hollow. "That's cowardice." The silence shifted then, pressing in like an invisible tide. The fryer hissed louder, lights dimming until only the glow of the heat lamps remained. Shadows stretched across the tile floor, curling toward them like grasping hands. Daniel felt it pulling at him, cold fingers brushing his spine, whispering in a language just beyond hearing. His vision blurred at the edges. Melissa's scream tore through the kitchen. "It wants blood now!" She lunged at Daniel, forcing him back against the fryer. Her hands pressed into his chest, not with malice, but with desperation. "Please, please, just let it be you. I can't go back in. I can't." Daniel fought against her grip, tears stinging his eyes. "Melissa, stop. This isn't you. It's them. Don't let them win." But her strength was feral, driven by the silence itself. The cameras above crackled, screens flickering. Daniel caught glimpses of things that shouldn't exist. Rows of eyeless faces pressed against the glass, mouths moving in perfect unison. Harlan barked, voice sharp. "Finish it! Give it to him!" Melissa froze, trembling. Her gaze darted from Daniel's eyes to the fryer's bubbling oil, then to the screens. Her breathing quickened. Every inhale a gasp, every exhale a sob. "I can't," she whispered. "Yes, you can," Harlan snapped. "No!" Melissa shook her head violently. "Not him. Not anymore. If someone has to go..." Her voice broke into a sob. "It'll be me." Before Daniel could react, Melissa shoved herself backward toward the fryer. "Melissa!" Daniel screamed, reaching for her. But her decision was already sealed. With one last look, not of fear, but of release, she tipped herself into the sizzling vat.
The sound was inhuman. A shriek of flesh-meeting oil, of silence tearing through the building in a chorus of static and screams. The lights surged, bursting overhead. The cameras above sparked and went black all at once. Daniel staggered back, blinded by the sudden dark. The smell hit him next. Acrid, burning, metallic. His stomach lurched. Harlan's face, lit faintly by the emergency exit sign, was twisted with fury. "No! No, no! That wasn't the deal! That wasn't the plan!" The building groaned, the air venting like a sigh. The silence roared louder than it ever had, shaking the very walls. Daniel clutched the counter to stay upright, heart hammering as he realized Melissa's sacrifice hadn't ended it. It had only broken the rules. Harlan's phone buzzed in his pocket, shrill against the chaos. He yanked it out, barked into it. "She gave herself. No, listen, she..." He stopped, color draining from his face. "What do you mean that's worse?" Daniel's blood ran cold. The fryer hissed once more before sputtering out, flames dying into darkness. The kitchen was silent. Too silent. Daniel raised his head. Every monitor above him was black. Every hum, every buzz of machinery, gone. Even Harlan's voice seemed swallowed, his frantic mutters fading into nothing. Melissa's final act hadn't satisfied the silence. It had awakened it. Daniel stood frozen in the suffocating dark, his mind screaming the words he had sworn never. To believe. One must not leave. And now, with Melissa gone, he understood. There was no leaving, not for her, not for him, not for anyone. The silence didn't end with Melissa. Daniel remembered that first night after she was gone. how the lights had buzzed back to life, how Harlan had vanished into the offices muttering curses, and how the friar sat, cold and dead, as if it had never burned her at all. But her face, her scream, those remained, echoing in the quiet spaces between his thoughts. And now, weeks later, he sat in the break room where Melissa once whispered secrets, waiting for the door to open. It did. The new hire looked no older than 19. Nervous energy radiated from him, his uniform shirt still creased from the package. He clutched his orientation binder like it was armor. "You, Daniel?" the kid asked. Daniel forced a smile. He'd practiced it in the mirror, but it still felt brittle. "Yeah, you must be Jacob." The kid nodded, eyes darting around the break room, lingering on the corners where the cameras watched. "They said you'd walk me through training. Just a regular night, right?" Daniel almost laughed at that. Regular. Nothing about this place had been regular for him since the first time he saw the rules taped to the fridge. He swallowed the urge and gestured toward the swinging door that led to the kitchen. "Yeah, just a regular night." The kitchen greeted them with its familiar artificial light. Too bright, too sterile, humming with the same mechanical rhythm Daniel had grown used to. Yet beneath it all, there was still the weight of silence, like something holding its breath. He guided Jacob past the fryer, past the grill, past the spot on the floor where Melissa had once stood frozen before the cameras. His skin prickled as he caught himself glancing at that very place, half expecting her shadow to remain. "First things first," Daniel began, his voice too formal, like he was reading lines from a script. "There are rules here. You'll see. A list on the fridge in the break room, but some things you need to hear from me directly." Jacob frowned. "Rules? Like more than food safety and closing procedures?" Daniel's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Yeah, more than that." He led Jacob to the small alcove where the security monitors hummed. The glow of the screens lit their faces, rows of static-filled footage cycling through different angles of the restaurant. And there she was, Melissa. Her figure lingered on one of the screens, standing in the corner of the kitchen, face pale, eyes locked on the camera. She hadn't moved since that night. Not a twitch, not a blink, just frozen, forever watching. Daniel felt Jacob stiffen beside him. "What the hell? Is that—" "It's nothing," Daniel cut in sharply, maybe too quickly. "Old feed, glitch. Don't worry about it." But his own gaze betrayed him, locking onto Melissa's hollow stare. He remembered the way Harlan had explained it after. The silence doesn't release its debt. It only reshapes it. Someone must always carry the burden. And now that someone was him. "Listen," Daniel said, voice softening, almost pleading. "There are rules you need to follow if you want to stay alive here. I'm going to tell you exactly what they are. You'll want to laugh or think I'm messing with you. Don't. Take them seriously. Every word." Jacob's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed. His knuckles whitened around his binder. "Okay," Daniel began. 1. Always greet the night manager when you clock in, even if you don't see anyone. "Say it out loud," Jacob frowned. Don't interrupt," Daniel snapped, harsher than he meant. His voice dropped. "Just don't." Jacob fell silent. 2. Never look directly at the cameras for more than 3 seconds. They look back. Jacob's head turned instinctively toward the glowing screens. Daniel caught his wrist before his gaze could linger. 3. If you hear your name from the walk-in freezer, don't answer. Just walk away. Jacob's breath hitched. 4. At 3:15 exactly, the fryer will hiss like someone dropped food in it. Don't check it. Don't touch it. Just keep working. The silence of the kitchen seemed to press closer as Daniel continued, his voice mechanical, rehearsed. Yet every word carried the weight of Melissa's sacrifice. 5. Never, ever leave before your shift ends, no matter what. Not for emergencies, not for family, Not for fire. You stay. Jacob tried to laugh, but it came out thin and shaky. That's a hell of a handbook. Daniel leaned closer, his forced smile trembling. It's not a joke. The first hour passed quietly. Daniel showed Jacob how to prep the patties, how to salt the fries, how to wipe down counters with the cheap industrial spray that never quite erased the grease. Jacob asked nervous questions, cracked bad jokes, and tried not to look at the cameras. But Daniel kept glancing at them. At her. Melissa hadn't moved, not in weeks. Still, sometimes, just at the edge of his vision, he swore her lips parted, like she was whispering something he couldn't quite hear. When the fryer hissed at 3:15, Jacob startled so badly he dropped a basket of frozen fries. Daniel grabbed his arm, hard. "Don't look!" Jacob froze, breathing ragged. "It's just oil." "Don't," Daniel hissed. The fryer hissed again, louder. Then it went silent. Jacob swallowed hard and nodded. He didn't argue again. Later, on break, Jacob sat at the table in the break room, unwrapping a burger. His hands shook as he ate. "You weren't kidding about the rules, huh?" Daniel leaned against the wall, watching him. "No. And there's one more you need to know. The last one. It's not written down. You only hear it from me." Jacob froze mid-bite. "What is it?" Daniel's eyes flicked to the security monitor in the corner, where Melissa still stood. The memory of her scream clawed at him. "One must not leave," he whispered. The room felt colder after he said it. Jacob stared at him, pale. "You mean ever?" Daniel didn't answer. He couldn't. Instead, he forced another brittle smile. "You'll get used to it." The rest of the night dragged on, a hollow repetition of tasks. Jacob tried to mask his unease, but Daniel saw the way his eyes darted to shadows, the way he flinched at the fryer's hiss. Daniel saw himself in that fear, saw the boy he'd been weeks ago, when Melissa was the one whispering rules into his ear, and now he was her. At closing, Daniel guided Jacob through the final steps, wiping counters, stacking chairs, locking fridges. The silence pressed heavier, as if leaning in to remind him of its presence. When they finally stood by the exit, Daniel placed a hand on Jacob's shoulder. "Remember the rules. Every shift. Every night. Don't break them. Ever." Jacob nodded, shakily. "Yeah, got it." Daniel opened the door. The night air felt wrong, too still, too heavy. He didn't step outside. He couldn't. Jacob did. For a brief moment, Daniel envied him. Envied the way the kid could still walk freely, unaware of the chains tightening around his ankles. But envy turned to dread as he watched the boy vanish into the darkness, wondering how long before the silence claimed him too. Daniel turned back to the monitors one last time. Melissa still stared, frozen. And for the first time, Daniel thought he saw her smile. Daniel sat alone in the break room long after Jacob's training shift ended. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting their sickly yellow glow across the tiles. On the wall monitor, Melissa's frozen figure still lingered. Face pale, eyes hollow, staring unblinking into the camera. For days now, Daniel had repeated the same script Melissa once gave him. The rules, the warnings, the smiles he didn't mean, but something inside him was splintering. Each time he looked into Jacob's eager, trusting eyes, he saw the reflection of himself on his first night. And each time he glanced at Melissa's unmoving ghost, the weight of her final scream echoed in his chest. He stood, fists trembling. It ends tonight. The restaurant was silent. Even the fryers, usually hissing in their restless hum, seemed muted, as though the place itself was holding its breath. Daniel walked to the back, past the freezer, past the humming cameras, and stopped before the forbidden door. Melissa had begged him never to open it. Harlan had spun his lies about safety protocols. But Daniel knew. Behind that door was the truth. The silence wasn't just feeding. It was keeping them trapped in an endless cycle. His hand shook as he pulled the master key Melissa had once hidden from him. With one breath, he slid it into the lock. The click echoed like a gunshot. The door creaked open, and a wave of stale, suffocating air rolled out. Darkness stretched beyond, not empty, but alive. Whispers swirled in the black, voices of every worker who had vanished. The missing girl, the trainer before Melissa, and countless others. Their faces flickered in the shadows, pleading, accusing. Daniel stepped inside. The whispers surged, clawing at his mind. Stay, train, obey, sacrifice. His vision swam. He saw Jacob's face, bright with hope. He saw Melissa's last broken smile. He saw himself, trapped forever, feeding the silence. No, he whispered, voice raw. Not anymore. From the counter, he grabbed the only weapon he could, a steel fry basket. Clutching it tight, he stepped deeper into the dark. You feed on attention, then choke on mine. With a roar, Daniel hurled the basket into the black, shattering the stillness. Sparks exploded, lights flickered, alarms screamed, and the whispers shrieked in agony. The silence convulsed, collapsing in on itself like a dying star. Melissa's frozen image on the monitor flickered, once, twice, then vanished. When the chaos subsided, Daniel was on his knees, chest heaving, sweat pouring down his face. The forbidden room lay empty now. Nothing but dust and silence. True silence. For the first time in years, the rules were gone. He stumbled back into the dining area as dawn light spilled through the front windows. Jacob arrived moments later, wide-eyed at the mess. What happened? He asked. Daniel looked at him, exhausted but free. Nothing, he said softly. Just forget the rules. And for the first time, he meant it.